I was in a bad living arrangement and could only crash when things with my parents went south, so I had to move out. I spent a lot of time on my friends' couches searching through all the roommate and apartment apps and websites when I came across something that caught my attention. On this app, a man named Luke had listed a room for rent in his three-bedroom, one-story house for $1,600 a month. He would essentially be my landlord and roommate because he would also be living there. He made sure to mention in all caps a few ground rules, though, like no parties, no big gatherings, no drinking in the living room, and no use of the basement. These seemed like fairly standard rules. I went to see the home in person, and as soon as Luke answered the door, I could tell he was a little withdrawn because of his quiet and somewhat stuttering manner. When he showed me the house, I could tell he was anxious because his voice would tremble and he would stutter. Told him I was interested, we shook hands, and 2 days later, I was moving in. We didn't draft any kind of lease or contract. I was simply going to be paying him off the accounts from month to month on the first day of every month. The bedroom was a good size and the house's floor plan was good. It was an open layout, meaning the kitchen, living room, and dining room were all one big open space. For $1,000 a month in my area, it was a steal. He also reiterated some additional ground rules in pepperoni, emphasized that I couldn't go in the attic or basement because I used them for storage only. Since the bedroom I was renting already had a bed and some basic furniture, all I really did was hang some wall decor and stock the closet and dresser with clothing. Fortunately, the bedroom was locked, and he gave me the key so I could lock it when he wasn't home. This seemed like a kind gesture at first, but Luke never explained what he did for a living. He simply informed me that he usually wouldn't be home. However, I soon discovered that wasn't the case because every time I got home from work, his car was always in the driveway. I began to hear loud noises outside of my room at night, like footsteps and doors opening and closing all the time. One night, I went outside to use the restroom and saw that the basement door was open. I went to the top of the stairs and looked down, and there was a dim light coming from what appeared to be a distant corner out of sight. It was around 2 in the morning when I heard banging noises coming from the basement. What could he be doing down there? Then the bangs stopped, and Luke appeared at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at me. It was so creepy that words can't adequately describe it. He looked visibly annoyed as he looked up at me, so I apologized and said, "I'm just going to the restroom." He responded almost angrily, so I went to the restroom and then went back to bed, lying awake for a while. A few days later, I came home to find my bedroom door unlocked. I always locked my room before leaving each day. I checked my room to see if anything was missing, and although nothing seemed to be missing, I noticed some items had been moved for steerates. Clothes that were stored in the dressers were no longer neatly stacked. They had been looked through, and I could see that the closet door was also cracked open. I had to figure out how to confront him about it because it felt like a clear invasion of privacy and a violation of my tenant rights. I went to knock on the door to his bedroom, but he didn't answer, and his car was in the driveway once more, so he had to be home. I was feeling very uneasy about it, so I decided to give up and return to my room after microwaving my dinner. While I was lounging in my room, I heard the entrance to Luke's room open. I took advantage of the moment to get up and confront him, so I went out to the living room and caught him in a hurry to leave the house. I asked him if he had entered my room, and he examined me blankly, and he said, "No." I replied delicately and without being hostile. Lamed that I had the only key to my bedroom after stating that the door was unlocked and that some of my belongings looked like they had been broken. I was shocked by this and wanted to ask my parents for advice, but I detested them at the time and didn't want anything to do with them. I was already back on the apps and websites searching for other postings, since I knew I didn't want to remain here. But then I saw that this was the first time Luke seemed to be away from home, so I had to check out the basement out of curiosity. Making sure his vehicle was gone by checking the windows, I proceeded to unlock the basement door. Enough? I couldn't locate any light switches. Used my phone's flashlight to find my way around the creaky stairs, which gave me the impression that I was in an abandoned house. When I reached the bottom, I noticed that the tan carpet was curling upwards at the walls, as if it had been poorly fitted to the floor. The basement, at least the main room, was quite small, and there was only one ugly couch in the center of the room. The smell was also a little funky, and it only got more severe as I got closer to the door in the corner. Fortunately, I tried to open the door, but it was locked, which I didn't really want to know what was inside because I'm not sure I was curious about what was inside, admitting that smell. It almost smelled like raw sewage. But worse, I did a quick sweep around the basement's main area, but all I could find were some cardboard boxes that were taped up and that I wasn't going to open. I returned upstairs and closed the door, spending the remainder of the evening in my room. I never heard Luke return, so he must have done so after I went to sleep. When I woke up, the room was still dark, my alarm was not going off, and I heard the floor next to my bed crack. I screamed, "No, how did you get in here?" And he told me to shut up. I flipped the cards on him and yelled, "Did you come into this room when I wasn't home?" He said, "No," and then he turned around and walked toward the door. I asked him, "How did you get in here?" And he held up his hand in the dark, but I wasn't sure what it meant. He said to me before disposing of the room, "I think you should find other living agreements." And then he closed the door. Coordinately began packing because I couldn't stay in that house for another minute. I knocked on his door and demanded that he return half of the rent because I had only been there for about 2 weeks. A few seconds later, he opened the door indoors, arm protruded from it, carrying a small stack of $50 of $50 bills. Made giving me the money look really spooky. Whatever it was near enough. Enough. Just $20, just wanted to get out of there. After an hour, I packed up and drove off, spending the night in my vehicle. When I went back to my parents' place the next day, they were even more thrilled to see me after I clarified the ridiculousness. My parents and I are doing well now, despite the fact that I moved out a month later. After meeting someone you met online, use care and good judgment if you want to live with them. Theme was David, and he seemed like a nice guy at first, always smiling and making small talk. However, as the days passed, I began to notice strange things about him, little quirks and odd behaviors that made me feel uneasy. It was my junior year of college, and I had moved off campus into a university apartment building. My fellow student was sort of assigned to me by the school in the belief that he was just a different person who required someone to live with. I brushed it off as harmless curiosity at first, even though I thought it was a little strange. But the more I thought about it, the more it bothered me. Then, late at night, I would hear talking and shuffling noises coming from David's room, which I tried to ignore, telling myself it was simply David watching TV or talking on the phone. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. David would constantly linger in my room, asking pushy questions about my personal life and prowling around my belongings as if he was far too comfortable doing so. Stressing to hear what was going on inside, couldn't sleep one night due to strange noises coming from his room. What I heard was strange. David whispering to himself in a low, muffled voice, and then, as abruptly as it had begun, the whisperers stopped, leaving nothing but silence. And then I heard Jeff. I tiptoed out of David's room and returned into my booze soon as he uttered my name. Did he somehow know I was outside his door? Why was David talking to himself? I didn't know what to make of this. Was he sleepwalking or was he concealing something from me? But how could he have known I wasn't in his room? The next day I was still feeling uncomfortable, and as the days went by and the sounds from David's chamber persisted, my anxiety only grew. I also observed little subtle changes in David's conduct, such as liar stares he would give me and his slightly evasive motions. When I woke up one night at a strange hour and heard David's whispering voice coming from the hallway, almost just outside my door, I was very alarmed and confused.